Good morning to you. Mark Sutter with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Saturday, September the 8th, 2018. Doing a bit of traveling, not related to anything hurricane related at the moment. So that's my hotel room behind me. I'm actually up in Washington, D.C. doing something with my daughter, but I can take, hey, the refrigerator turned on just in time. I can take the laptop anywhere, and here we are. So let's get right to it. All right, first I want to show you, starting from west to east, this is the forecast track for what is still presently Hurricane Olivia, and it is forecast to weaken as it moves westward and then turns to the southwest, cutting across portions of the Hawaiian Islands. So you folks there, brace for impacts, heavy rain, especially on these upslope areas. The windward side of these islands could be hit with some very heavy rainfall, depending on the organization and the size and the overall structure, which is impossible to know this far out. But it looks like Tuesday into Wednesday, yep, the Hawaiian Islands once again having to brace for another set of impacts, high waves, gusty winds, stronger overall trades, and then of course the potential for very heavy rain. And I will be staying on top of this. Obviously I'm not going to be able to go to Hawaii this time, but we can still talk about it here just to give you my insight and to let you know what's going on. People out there hopefully very aware of the situation, despite the fact that it's pretty rare to happen. It's been pretty common this year. All right, in the Atlantic Basin, very, very busy this morning with Tropical Depression 9. This is going to be a concern for the islands, it looks like. Helene out here, going to bring possible hurricane, tropical storm to hurricane conditions to the Cabo Verde Islands. And then, of course, we have Florence here, which is beginning to get better organized. We'll take a look at that in a moment. And disregard this, very low chance. It's just a ripple of energy, if you will, sitting out there in the Atlantic Basin. So let's start with Helene real quick, okay? Going to turn out to sea, hopefully. I mean, we learned the hard way with Florence. Most of the time when they develop this early, they turn out to sea. I mean, honestly, they do. If they didn't and they all made it over here or over here, people wouldn't live at the coast. So climatologically speaking, a good deal of them move out to sea. Tropical storm warnings, hurricane watch for portions of the Cabo Verde Islands, the southern region. They don't get that much heavy rainfall, believe it or not. So this could be very problematic. Luckily, it's not a very large population center, but people do live there. 9, Tropical Depression 9, forecast to become a hurricane and move right into the Windward and Leeward Islands, sort of splitting it in the middle. And this, depending on the size and the track, could bring tropical storm conditions as far north as areas that were impacted directly by Irma, and of course farther to the south, areas directly impacted by Maria. And why does that matter? Well, infrastructure is still kind of fragile down here. We know that. We've heard all about it. And so this has some serious implications. People are still quite weary from last year, but they are resilient too. Most humans are, and we'll pay attention. We'll see. At least we have several days, but from the windwards, the leewards, the whole area, please keep a close watch on this. A hurricane looks threatening to your area within 5 days, and we will stay on top of this appropriately in the coming days as well. Beyond this time frame, there's no reason to speculate, does this continue on? What happens after 5 days? Why even worry about it right now? All right, of course, Florence is going to be and is and will continue to be the big headline. And right now, the cone, the probability cone here, cone of uncertainty, whatever you want to call it, is now onshore in the Carolinas. And so from, I would say, Virginia Beach to northern Florida, you need to start thinking about preparations this weekend. The little things now that can go a long way later. Go ahead and get some extra gas cans if you don't have enough. 10 gallons of extra gas, that's pretty reasonable. Most small cars, that'll fill them up, close to it. And your SUVs and vans, that'll get you about a half a tank. Get the gasoline now, get the generator checked, do some stuff this weekend so that you're not stressed going along, because the clock basically just started, and it's going to count down to 0. And when it gets to 0, that means there's a landfall. And that is looking more and more likely that Florence will make landfall somewhere along the United States East Coast. It is not completely out of the realm of possibility that you get impacts from northern Florida all the way up to potentially Delaware and maybe southern New Jersey in terms of direct impacts. It just depends on the track. If it comes along the southern part of the cone, that makes sense, right? And if it's the northern part of the cone, and that's what the cone tells us is where the center is liable to be. This is an error cone for the center forecast. It tells us nothing of the size of the hurricane, nor does it tell us about the swells that will come out ahead of this. It's a tropical storm now, but it will be a hurricane, and heavy rainfall, so forth and so on. There is going to be a slew of hazards associated with this, depending on where it goes in. We think about the rain threat for this area possibly, certainly along the coast, of course, but we have Gordon, the remnants of which, and I'm going to show you about that in a moment. This is a very dangerous setup, and I am not kidding about that. This absolutely cannot be taken lightly, and this is not going to be just a coastal problem. That's where the most significant impacts and perhaps the most dramatic impacts will be, but following close behind could be a setup somewhere here in the Appalachians, depending on where this comes in, that we have an even bigger disaster overall, who knows, right, with flooding. Think about Camille, 1969, Floyd in 1999, and there are others examples. Matthew, as recently as 2016, that was down more in the Sandhills area of North Carolina. But when you get this much moisture, the ground is already saturated from a very wet summer, plus the remnants of Gordon up in there. That is a big problem. I want to show you the discussion, and instead of breaking down each of these paragraphs, let's just look at the key messages. I tweeted this just a little bit ago. Number 1, it is forecast to be a dangerous major hurricane near the southeast U.S. coast by late week, and the risk of direct impacts continues to increase. However, given the uncertainty in track and intensity forecasts at those time ranges, it's too soon to determine, and this is really important, folks, the exact timing, location, and magnitude of those impacts. Nobody's going to be able to tell you, is my neighborhood, and specifically my house, going to be directly impacted, yes or no? We don't know the answers to that. Number 2, interest along the U.S. East Coast, and this is important too, particularly from North Florida, yes, you're included, through North Carolina, should closely monitor the progress of Florence. And I would just add to that the possibility of Southeast Virginia and parts of the Delmarva region. Obviously, you're going to be watching it. It's out there, and you're going to be watching it. But specifically, I think it's telling that they are singling out, if you will, North Florida through North Carolina. That's very important there. And in between, South Carolina, Georgia. And that is a very storm surge prone area. And then, of course, the precursor to all this, everything that will set up ahead of time, will be the large swells that are already impacting Bermuda, and they're going to come into the East Coast beginning this weekend. And I am not kidding you. That's going to result in life-threatening, I wish I could just red. Let me underline that too. Life-threatening surf and rip currents. I want you to be alive, okay? And if I want to be self-serving, I want you to be able to watch my videos, all right? Let's just call it for selfish reasons, so you can watch my videos and see what I do. Stay alive, please, all right? Without you, there's no reason for me to be here. And as hyperbolic as that sounds, this is very, very important. Those rip currents are going to come in, and the ocean can kill you. So please be careful out there. And that goes for you surfers. Be careful, all right? And if you see somebody in trouble, lend a hand. Looking at the structure of everything. Satellite animation from Tropical Tidbits. This is 94L. Shouldn't be a player of any concern. This is the remnants of Gordon's, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls. I mean, wow. And it's interacting with this front, and we got this big old area of high pressure, keeping these troughs at bay. The closest trough's New Mexico in September, as Mike Watkins pointed out last night, my colleague from Florida. The closest trough of any significance is in New Mexico. Wow. This battleground area is going to drop a lot of rain. Flood risk is tremendous. Here's Florence getting its act together, poised for rapid intensification. Do not be surprised if this becomes a Category 5 at some point. That's, oh, come on. Remember Irma? Hopefully. Category 5 not out of the question at some point. When it gets closer to the coast, hopefully it'll weaken. But as my good friend in emergency management down in Collier County says, hope by itself is not an adequate planning tool. This is TD9. Again, you got to watch out for it over here. And this is Helene. So much for the quiet season. I guess we are perhaps destined to end up with a slightly above normal season, but it's going to be a high impact season. And that's what matters in the end. I thought this was interesting, if not unnerving. And by the way, I'm going to be very real. Not that I'm ever not real, but the intensity of the situation, the graveness, will require that I use more serious, scary sounding terms. And I've always said, I will let you know when it's time to be afraid or time to panic. Panic's a bad word, but I don't want people panicking. This is it. This is when we start seeing things that make people hopefully pay attention. And this is one of them. That this WinSat pass, special amazing technology, is starting to develop a very, very tight core. And unlike Gordon that did that right off the coast of Marco Island in Florida, this is going to pass over increasing upper ocean heat content. It's developing the banding. I mean, this is a bad sign that this could get cranking early, and the sky's the limit. There's something called the maximum potential intensity, the MPI, and this could reach that. Category 5 would not be out of the question, and I don't think too many people would argue with me about that. The intensity guidance is just shy of Category 5, for what it's worth, and overall, not all of it, but most of the hurricane-specific models, this should become a Category 4 quite easily, and it wouldn't surprise me if this peaks out at 160, 170 miles per hour at some point. Looking at the very important ensembles, yes, we want to know where it's going to go. Where is the center going to go? And that's what most people are asking. But then, of course, that means where will the rest of the effects go with it? Because a hurricane is not just a center. There's a lot more to it than that. So this shows us the ensembles, the various runs, and in this case, the ECMWF, which is 51 members. And what I want you to take away from this is it's the what-if scenario. The ensembles gives us the whole, well, what if it does this? What if it does this? And it does that a total of 51 times, I believe, including the operational version, what we call the deterministic run. So let's just look at this and try to break it down. I'm going to use blue. Hopefully this will show up well. It looks to me like there's two distinct groups. One of them comes up through here, and we can outline it. And then the other one, less members, right up through here. These envelopes, these lobes, if you will, appendages. The vast majority, clearly, into South Carolina and Georgia. And then there's a curious sort of opening, and let me just zoom in on this. There's a curious opening with no members right here. Isn't that interesting? That'll change, but I just found it to be interesting. So you've got this one definitive cluster, unfortunately, that comes in through here, and then another fairly tight but not as populated cluster. Whoops, too far out. But you get the idea. You see it. So that's telling. And what is it telling? It's telling me more than likely this makes landfall somewhere within that blue line that I just drew. The center will make landfall. The rest of the hurricane comes with it. Remember that, please. The GFS Ensembles only has 20 members total. And from the 6Z run, it's run 4 times a day. This other one that I showed you is run twice a day. A decent clustering into eastern North Carolina, southeast Virginia, none in Georgia and Florida, and then a few curiously offshore. Basically, the GFS is breaking down the ridge and allowing Florence to gain more latitude and then kind of stall out. The European, as you can see, really has this tendency to bring it farther inland. See that? Less of this curlicue stuff going on. Which model is going to be right? I don't know. But I will say this, the United Kingdom Met model, the UK Met, is also fairly far to the west over here. I'm sorry I don't have a version of that to show you. But the bottom line, as the Hurricane Center said, the facts are, this looks like it's headed towards somebody along the southeast coast. Some location, many locations. A lot of impacts coming up. I want to show you this because this is extremely important. The groundwork already being laid by this green. Flash flood watches. This is not related to anything from hurricane or tropical sources. But this is a huge issue. Mainly, I'm worried about this area. If Florence comes in and winds up here, just a hypothetical, no matter how it gets up here, that could be a big problem. But I want to bring this up too. The fact that we're seeing all that green, that is from Tropical Storm Gordon. Its remnants, the energy is still there, and it made landfall Tuesday night, ladies and gentlemen, down in extreme southeast Mississippi, southwest Alabama. And look, it is still causing problems. There was a dam failure yesterday in north central Mississippi, and we have all these flash flooding issues going on, the high risk of major flooding. These tropical cyclones, we have to understand the fullness of their potential impacts. It's not just what you see on TV and in the dramatic video from the hurricane chasers, myself included. I don't like that term, hurricane chaser, but you get the idea. It's more than just what you see on television. They have large swaths of land that they, I don't want to say lay waste to, but they come with a lot of weapons to use, so to speak, and the rainfall is a big part of that, so please keep that in mind. All right, again, I'm in Washington, D.C. doing something with my daughter. Be heading home in just a few hours, and this evening, late tonight, I'll produce another discussion. Follow me on Twitter if you're not already, and I can post relevant pieces of information there. And also, I am on Patreon, and if you like what I do and say, you know what, I'd like to help out what he does, this is my job, most of it's funded by people like you, and you can join up and join that effort. Patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. And it's not just a way to contribute. I actually am able to give you something back, some exclusive access to stuff. And you're basically part of the crowdfunding effort. So check that out. And a giant, bold capital letters thank you to those that have signed up, especially this year is when it's really grown. So thank you so much. It helps me to keep going. I don't have a magic money box to keep spitting out 20s, unlimited. I wish I did. Don't we all? And that way I can continue to bring you this information. And then when we get into the field, and that's coming, I can provide you with access to what we're doing. And that's important as well. All right. Very serious times coming up. Try to keep your cool. Don't get too stressed about it. Take some time out. Take a time away from it. Honestly. Go see a movie. I'm sure there's some good movies out there. But in the meantime, prepare a little bit today, tomorrow, Monday, and get ahead of the curve. Okie dokes, okie dokes. I want you to be healthy and mentally in the game, all right? Don't let it get to your head too much. I know, easy for me to say. I'm worried about it too, folks. I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina, by the way. My home is. More about that later, perhaps. I'm done. I tried to say, I am done. I'm going to leave that in. I could just cut that out. I am finished for today. I appreciate you tuning in. I am Mark Sudduth. That's what I was trying to say. I promise. Boy, I cracked myself up. Thank you for watching. I'll have more for you later tonight.